Welcome to part 2 of the video series Embedding Evaluations in Everyday Activities, a tutorial designed to introduce the concept of opportunistic experiments. In part 2, Recognizing Opportunities for Rigorous Evaluation, we'll introduce situations that provide good opportunities for embedding experiments in things that districts are already doing. As mentioned in Part 1, opportunistic experiments are a type of randomized controlled trial, or RCT, that takes advantage of a planned intervention or policy change. We also refer to these RCTs as experiments. In some cases, these changes are an opportunity to generate rigorous evidence without introducing a lot of disruption to how your schools operate. Now that you understand why these opportunities are valuable, in this video, we will explain what opportunistic experiments look like and provide some examples of situations that present just this kind of chance to improve evidence-based decision-making. So what characterizes an opportunistic experiment? It's important to keep in mind that not every situation will meet every one of these criteria. This is a list of some of the most common elements. First, there is a chance to randomly assign participants. This can be students, teachers, schools, to a planned intervention, policy, or practice. In other words, it's an opportunity because it's building on something that is either already in place or planned to be in place. We'll talk in more detail about what this might look like in practice on the next few slides. Next, in many cases, it can be low disruption experimentation. What do we mean by this? If the experiment is initiated by the entity being studied, for example, the district, then they have an advantage over external researchers. They often have better insight and knowledge about what kind of data can be collected and how, while causing the least disruption and distraction from regular instruction in their schools. Relatedly, when the experiment is initiated by the entity being studied, there is naturally a strong partnership between the researchers collecting and analyzing the data and the implementers of the policy or practice. They will usually have similar ultimate priorities and the same degree of investment in the results. Because this kind of study is often entity-driven, the researchers also have relatively easy access to data about the key outcomes of interest. Sometimes this is data that is already being collected as part of normal practice, like attendance rates or test scores. In other cases, it may be survey data that the district collects and agrees to share with the researchers because they initiated the study. And finally, these experiments can be low cost. Cost can be one of the biggest deterrents in conducting an RCT versus other means of evaluation. But particularly when capitalizing on situations where limited resources have to be allocated in some way already, adjusting that process to be consistent with an RCT may not require many additional resources, especially when the experiment relies on data that is already being collected. So let's turn to focus on how to identify a random assignment opportunity in your own context. One type of opportunity involves programmatic changes, either implementing alternative approaches, enhancing a current approach, or expanding a current approach to new populations. The central question here is, can we make what we currently do better? This may involve trying a different way of doing things with some participants. You could randomly assign part of the group to receive a workshop in one half-day session, and the other part to have an hour-long session on 4 different days, and compare outcomes. Which option works better? This would be studying a program alternative. Or you might choose to give some participants the new and improved version of the program or practice. You could randomly assign part of the group to get the regular treatment, and the other part to get a new component that you are considering implementing, more time perhaps, or additional materials. By comparing outcomes between the two groups, you could learn whether this program enhancement actually improves outcomes. Third, you might be considering including more participants in a given program, sometimes with different characteristics than the original participants. For example, you have a program that you feel definitely works for high-risk students, but you're not sure whether it will work if it's given to students at more moderate risk. If you randomly assign some schools to add students to the program, and the others to just keep serving the original population, you can test whether outcomes are positive for this expansion. Together, all of these examples represent changes in programs, policies, or practices. A second type of opportunity is excess demand, or, put another way, limited supply. This might be the most obvious opportunity. If you have something that is being implemented, but not enough resources to serve everyone who is interested, You have a great setup for implementing an experiment to figure out if the policy or practice in question is effective, and therefore worth trying to find additional resources to serve more participants. The third type of opportunity is sort of a specific variation on the first, testing program changes that have to do specifically with communication or outreach. We highlight these here because, in this age of technology, we have a lot more options than we used to for communicating with students and their parents, yet are still learning what works best and in what circumstances. These kinds of program changes may also be quicker and easier to implement, and therefore quicker and easier to test. So let's review with some examples. In addition to tutoring provided during school hours, a district wants to try out a new Saturday Academy intervention, providing additional academic tutoring for pre-algebra students in 8th grade. The district is unsure whether tutoring provided outside school hours will be successful, given that students may face transportation problems or have competing activities. So in this opportunity, we can randomly assign a proportion of students to get the chance to participate in the Saturday Academy. We can then evaluate whether the Academy results in higher math achievement for those students compared to the students who receive tutoring during the school day alone. This is an example of program enhancement. In our next example, a school district has the opportunity to implement a new computer-based science curriculum in its elementary schools. However, the district does not have sufficient staff resources to roll out the curriculum to every school at the same time. Here, we have the opportunity to randomly assign schools to get the program first. We can follow up after the end of the year to see whether their outcomes were better than those of the schools who also wanted to implement the curriculum, to see if the computer-based curriculum is more effective than the standard curriculum. This is a classic example of an excess demand or limited resources opportunity. Finally, in our last example, a district is having difficulty enrolling parents in the Parent Institute, a 10-week workshop that provides parents with information and assistance to help their children prepare for college. Currently, the district sends parents a packet in the mail, inviting them to participate in the Parent Institute. The district would like to see if other communication efforts, such as email or phone calls from teachers, would be more effective at getting parents to enroll. In this situation, we can randomly assign families to multiple groups and implement a different outreach mode with each, measuring which alternative results in higher enrollment. This is a program change related to communication and outreach. We hope these examples have helped you identify some alternatives for conducting opportunistic experiments in your context. Once you've identified an opportunity, you can conduct the experiment by identifying sites and recruiting participants, conducting and monitoring random assignment, collecting data, and analyzing data. The next video, part 3 of this series, will address common questions and concerns about implementing this type of evaluation.